Why are so many guys bald?
I don't believe in male balding.
I am balding.
I began losing my hair at 19.
There are countless men you see every day with no hair on their head. Sometimes you even see some start balding in the later stages of school. But you don't really see women get bald like men do. Why is that? A lot of this comes down to something called DHT, which stands for dihydrotestosterone. Your body actually makes DHT from testosterone, and this isn't some mistake or random byproduct. DHT is actually a more active version of testosterone, meaning it binds more strongly to androgen receptors in the body. In short, your body is basically converting testosterone into a stronger signal, one that has a bigger effect on certain tissues, including your hair follicles. During development, especially in males, DHT plays a big role. It's involved in things like facial hair, body hair, and basically a lot of the traits people associate with male puberty. So in that sense, it's useful. It's doing its job. But the strange part is that the exact same hormone that helps grow hair in some areas can slowly shut it down in others. On the scalp, in people who are genetically sensitive, DHT binds to hair follicles and starts shrinking them over time, and this can take many, many years. The hair gets a bit thinner, then it grows for a shorter amount of time, then it comes back weaker after each cycle, until eventually the follicle is still technically there, but it's producing hair so fine that you can barely see it, or it just stops altogether. This is what's called androgenetic alopecia, or male pattern baldness. And the important part is this. It's not just about having DHT, it's about how sensitive your hair follicles are to it. Some people have follicles that are basically resistant. DHT is there, but nothing really happens. Others are way more sensitive. Even normal levels of DHT are enough to trigger that shrinking process. And that sensitivity is mostly genetic. There's this idea that baldness comes from your mother's side, which kind of comes from one well-known gene on the X chromosome. But in reality, it's not that simple. There are multiple genes involved, coming from both parents, all influencing things like hormone sensitivity, hair growth cycles, and follicle behavior. So you can end up with two people who have similar testosterone levels, similar lifestyles, even similar health, and completely different outcomes. One person keeps thick hair into their 60s. The other starts noticing a receding hairline in their early 20s. As you know, you don't just wake up one day and you're bald. Balding takes years and most people don't even notice it at first. One of the earliest signs is usually around the temples. The hairline starts to shift back slightly, creating that kind of M shape. At the same time, the crown, the area at the back of your head, might start thinning, but it's hard to see unless you're specifically looking for it. Another thing is the texture. The hair itself can start to feel different. It gets finer, softer, almost weaker. You might notice more hair falling out in the shower or on your pillow, but that alone doesn't mean much. Everyone sheds hair daily. It's more about whether it's growing back the same way. There are even rough classification systems like the Norwood scale that map out how male pattern baldness progresses over time. But even those aren't perfect. Some people skip stages, some stay in one stage for years. So you can get a sense of where it's going, but you can't predict it exactly. Let me just start this by saying there isn't one single solution that works for everyone. Most treatments basically try to interfere with that DHT process in some way. Some people use medications that reduce how much DHT is produced in the body. Others use topical treatments that try to stimulate hair growth directly. And for some people, these actually work pretty well, especially if they start early. But it's not really a cure. It's more like slowing things down or maintaining what you still have. And the results vary a lot. Some people respond really well and keep most of their hair. Others don't see much change at all, which again comes back to how their body, their hormones, and their genetics interact. Everyone loves to bring up Turkey when they want to talk about hair reversal. Places like Istanbul have basically become a global hub for hair transplants. It's usually a combination of experienced surgeons, high volume, and lower cost compared to countries like the UK or the US. The actual procedure is kind of interesting. They take hair follicles from areas of your scalp that are resistant to DHT, usually the back or sides of your head, and transplant them into the areas that are thinning or bald. And those donor hairs keep their original properties. So even after being moved, they're still resistant to DHT, which is why they can continue growing in places where hair was previously lost. But does it actually last? The transplanted hair itself is usually permanent because it comes from those DHT resistant areas, but the rest of your hair isn't. So if you're still losing hair in other areas, that can continue over time, which means you could end up with a situation where the transplanted hair stays, but the surrounding natural hair keeps thinning. That's why some people need multiple procedures, or combine transplants with medication to maintain the rest. So technically, yes, you can still go bald after a hair transplant, just not in the exact same way as before. Women actually experience a similar condition called female pattern hair loss, but it shows up differently. Instead of a receding hairline or a bald spot at the crown, it's usually more like overall thinning. The hair gets less dense, especially along the part line, but it rarely leads to complete baldness. And a big reason for that is hormones again, specifically estrogen. Estrogen seems to have a protective effect on hair follicles. It kind of balances things out, slowing down the impact of DHT. Since women generally have lower testosterone and higher estrogen, the whole process is less aggressive. So it's not that women don't lose hair, it's more that their hair is in a way buffered against the same level of damage. But after menopause, estrogen levels drop significantly, and when that happens, the protective effect weakens. That's why some women start noticing more visible hair thinning later in life. It's not sudden, and it still doesn't usually follow the same pattern as male baldness, but the difference between men and women becomes a bit less extreme. So the gap isn't absolute, it just depends on the hormonal environment over time. Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts or feedback, please leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe.